Okay, so I'm sick today, but I'm doing another technique with thick gesso, and you can see I did it at roughly the same time that I did the other one, because I figured, well, I've got my thick gesso out. I'll just gesso both those pages while I go. So I'm just rubbing it in and rubbing that gesso across the page, but I will go in and cover it again. I'm just going to stamp one of these Stamp-O-Teak stamps. Love that girl. Love Daniel Torrance stamps. And then I'm going to make sure that India ink is actually really set. So excuse me if I cough at all. So then I get a good blot of gesso, and I'm going to go over the gesso through the stencil cogs and also the stamp as well. So watch me as I do that. Now this is a thinner gesso, this is Liquitex gesso. The gesso I used before is a much thicker gesso when I used it through the stamp, so I don't use the Liquitex through stencils. It's just a bit too hard to do that. So then I just rubbed enough off so I could see that, because I'm going to go over her later, but I wanted her there. I wanted her there under the gesso, and that whole image actually sealed under that gesso coat. And just drawing a bit of a border because I want to keep it within the bounds, even though my stencil, as you can see, goes outside. So I've done a class with Joanne Sharp, and I got my composition book / spiral book there, and I like those low letters, so I'm going to write in my letters right from the beginning and just paint around them and do some stuff with them. Not quite sure at this stage what I'm doing. But I had this idea for the, you know, just let it be, let the cogs turn. So, yeah, because I didn't want to do a boy page. And cogs are always like boy page or vintage. And this is more, nah, I'm going to do what I want. So I'm using my Inktense outliner. Saw this whole video, and I can't remember who it was, but they tested Inktense pencils over gesso and moulding paste. So I'm just using gesso here, but it goes really quite well. They're not as vibrant, obviously, but I love the way that it goes in all the nooks and crannies. You can see I've got my full set of Inktense blocks out, and these is my wet set, so I just use them in palette like watercolours, and I'm just adding lots of water in and starting to let stuff drip and have fun in all those gouges, you know, from the oh, I love that colour green. It's like a French blue and a lime green. And that's actually a yellow mixing in with the green. Love it. So, at the moment all I'm wanting to do is kind of block in with the colour. I had this idea that I was going to do awesome colour. And, oh, that magenta is just yum. But I find that the magenta was not quite as strong as the yellows. For a particular product, I find that the yellows in the Inktense are just superb, and the reds and the oranges. So now I'm using a really kind of pastely yellow because I want it to kind of blend. I don't want it to overpower, and the yellows do tend to overpower. So bringing in a little bit here, and I was thinking I was going to work in the negative space. I ended up later on deciding I'm going to cover some of that up and do some different stuff. So now I'm just wanting to define those features even more. You can just see me actually going in all and getting my it's a very good angle watercolor brush that I'm using here, and it's beautiful for washes. In my serious watercolor art, I use it for washes. And here I'm using it kind of for the same thing. It just grades the watercolor really, really well. Then I thought I would spray it and just let it bleed together. And wherever it bled, I left it, and I wanted to just bolden that color, deepen that magenta at the bottom. Really love that, and you can see me pushing the pigment around in the water, so I decided that I was going to mop some of it up. But I'm liking the way that's turning out, and of course it fades into the gesso because it bleeds into and dyes the gesso underneath. So what am I doing now? Right, so I'm getting neutral tints in the inktense blocks, and just I was experimenting here just with trying to make those cogs look a little bit more defined, because I thought they were looking just that still washed out. I was seeing them but not enough. I think mainly because of the types of patterns that they were. So I was just playing around here, not quite sure what I'm doing, just playing. Decided that I would go all over and start darkening some of those areas because I want them to be a little bit different to the rest of the page. You can see the neutrals still blend. They don't just look black over the top, and they look quite muted because of course I watered them down quite a lot. Now I'm pulling out my twinkling H2Os. I got these for Christmas off my beautiful friend Claudia Rossi, and this is the first time I kind of really used them, and they have some gorgeous colours. So I'm really excited about using them, and what I wanted to do was essentially just allow that to shimmer. So I'm adding in a depth of colour here and allowing it to shimmer. So this page at the end actually shimmers quite nicely. And this is a red I'm going over. I don't have a magenta in the H2Os. It's a beautiful yellow. It's quite dark, isn't it? You can see it's like a mustardy yellow. Really liked that. Wanted to let that drip down and make oranges with the magentas. Really yummy. And of course dry it off yet again. Always drying. When you're using watercolour media, you're always drying. I'm loving how bright this page is though. It's making me happy. I feel sick. I wanted something bright and cheery to make me happy. So now I'm using my secure koi markers, and I'm just going to grade some of this, just colouring some bits and pieces in. And her skin. And then I'm going to sit there and grade the darker colours that I add in later. And I'm thinking as I'm going, what colour will I use that will go with what I've got here. And I figured that blue hair was pretty darn cool. I saw a girl with blue hair the other day, and then I watered it in just to grade it. And now you can see me just adding some depth of colour to dresses and little items of clothing and her shoes. So now I'm going to get in my India ink marker pen, and I'm going to just go over this whole stamp. You see me just doing it in a kind of a sketchy way, nothing really full on. If I want to add extra details in, I do, and I don't worry about it, you know, like I just add those details in. And oh, she's really cute. At the end, I don't think I'll show you this on camera, but at the end I actually grey her eyes in. Now I'm doodling a border. Because I had a slightly messy border, I decided that I would do a messy doodle around the border, which I really like. And now I just wanted to sketchily go in amongst all those cogs, just to kind of almost look like I'd drawn them and scribbled them in, but that they had that extra texture there as well. Quite like that. But if, to my mind, they still weren't dark enough. So now I'm using a Stabilo pencil just to kind of darken them in and do a few bits and pieces with them. Still not kind of happy with the way they're turning out. I like the shadow though, and I'm not water activating at this stage. Then I got some Inca Gold paste, and I kind of went over these large bits here. You see the large raised bits of the gesso. I just did that. I just wanted something a little bit different. And then I pulled out a Neo colour because, you know, I tried everything else. Oh, no I didn't. I actually pulled out my Zig marker, and this is how I always intended for that to look. It turned out exactly the way I wanted it. And I like playing with this. Now I've pulled out my Signo white roller pen, and where it's hit the twinkling H2Os, it kind of gouged it a bit much. So I then decided after this that I would use white paint. And here I just decided that I was going to use the white Signo to actually put light shadow, you know, light highlights on the left sides of those letters. Then I went and had a look for some white paint and decided that I was going to go over those white bubbles with a brush and just added them in, filled a couple in, add a little bit of interest. I like the bubbles. It makes me happy. You do what you want because it makes you happy. Now I get the Neo colour and I find that it goes over those bumps really well and highlights those nooks and crannies, and I was quite happy with that. And I decided to rub the insides and then I was going to water activate the outsides. And I signed it here and then I decided to water activate them, so here we go. Just mainly the outsides so that I can blur them more. That's it, so it gives you a real light and dark there, and that's the end of the page. Thanks for watching.